Zen Master Hongji, vast space is all-embracing, the same as ultimate emptiness. Developed skill is equally effective for all the 10,000 forms. If not a single dust is distinguished outside, then you can adapt to changing circumstances. If not one speck is left over inside, then immediately you can abide in meditation. Since the inside is empty and can respond, absorbing or not absorbing is equal. Since the outside is interconnected and constantly vacant, abiding or not abiding is all the same. Practitioners of the way enter samadhi just like our home wind that breezes through the entire world. So the writings of Hongji are both instructions, these beautiful expressions of meditation practice and of the awakened mind. And they echo Dogen's words that practice and realization are not separate. They're not separate stages. In the Buddha Dharma, they are one and the same. Practice, realization, which is what we are doing here at Sesshin this morning. Meditation is not a tool for enlightenment, but the physical expression and embodiment of being an awakened human Buddha. Nothing to attain. Excuse me, allergies. So Dogen called this silent illumination method shikantaza, just sitting in awareness, that simple, that simple. So coming to the experience of the non-separation of all things and the realization that all dualities are illusory. So notice the language, the experience, revealing this non-attaining language, breezing through the world, relaxing into reality, which is what we are doing. So Hongji expresses that we already have the shining field of boundless emptiness from the very beginning. The shining field of boundless emptiness is our birthright. Not something we create, not something we enhance. All we have to do is allow it to shine through. Stop getting in our own way. Stop complicating it. And of course, there's nowhere else to look but here, right? Where else would it be? Nothing is external to this luminous present mind. It is nowhere else. It is not something we seek or attain. And Dogen expresses this: have no design on becoming a Buddha, since this meditation is already the Dharma gate of repose and bliss. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it? The Dharma gate of repose and bliss, the practice realization of totally culminated enlightenment, already totally culminated, just as it is. So we're all somewhat familiar with the words of Dogen, right? And this morning I'd kind of like to delve a little deeper into the poetic expression of meditation practice and of the awakened mind. And just keep in mind that we are in the world of all possibilities. We are always in the world of all possibilities. The only limitations are the ones we impose upon ourselves. So let's just open the vast mind that is our birthright. Something that struck me in reading Hongji is the devotional element. Can you feel that, the devotional element in these teachings? Both in his reverence for the teachers of the lineage who expressed this practice and in his appreciation for the natural world. These just incredibly beautiful observations of the world. And I do think there's a tendency sometimes to devalue the path of devotion. But ultimately, in non-dual terms, what is the path of devotion? It's simply, I think someone said, it's sinking into the source of love. It's just sinking into the source of love. So the path of surrender. And what is love? It's always non-separation, non-separation. So devotion and meditation are not conflicting paths. And sometimes they're presented as such. Oh, those devotional people, all the stuff and the things, and oh, those meditators, navel gazers staring at the wall. But ultimately, at the bottom of the mountain, maybe they seem like different practices. By the top of the mountain, exactly the same, because there are no practices, there are no paths in realization, right? There is just this sinking into the source of love. And Hong Zhui expresses deep gratitude to Shi Tao, who preceded him by like 300 years. Shi Tao, of course, the author of The Identity of Relative and Absolute that we chant every day at Sesshin. This beautiful expression of the interplay of the absolute and the phenomenal. The four elements return to their nature as a child to its mother. The four elements return to their nature as a child to its mother. Tell me that isn't devotional. And this interplay pervades Hong Shui. There's no conflict there at all. Practitioners of the way enter samadhi just like their home wind that breezes through the entire world. So let's look a little more deeply at this expression. The cloud's fascination. This is also Hongji. The cloud's fascination and the moon's cherishing. Fascination and cherishing. A person of the way fundamentally does not dwell anywhere. The white clouds are fascinated with the green mountain's foundation. The bright moon cherishes being carried along with the flowing water. The clouds part and the mountain appears. The moon sets and the water is cool. Each bit of autumn contains vast interpenetration without bounds. Every dust is whole without reaching me. The 10,000 changes are stilled without shaking me. If you can sit here with stability, then you can freely step across and engage the world with energy. There is an excellent saying that the 6 sense doors are not veiled. The highways in all directions have no footprints, always arriving everywhere without being confused, gentle without hesitation. The perfected person knows where to go. So let's not be limited by the use of metaphor here, right? We are the clouds are us, the mountains are us, And the fascination is us. How wonderful. Why else would we be sitting on these cushions? The fascination is us. And precisely in the darkness of merging with emptiness, the light of differentiation just naturally shines through. No effort at all. Sheet 2, light and darkness are a pair like the foot before and the foot behind in walking. That simple, that natural. And at this temple, we emphasize working with the sense gates a lot, without clinging to sense phenomena, without making a self of seeing or hearing or thinking or feeling. Just this vast, open ground, the ground of being, in which our own inner illumination appears. Where else would it appear? So using the sense gates as gates of awakening, there's a reason they're called gates, right? Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, thoughts and feelings, all empty, all empty. And eventually, inevitably, we just tumble into non-dual awareness at some stage, whether on the cushion, whether in the line of Kroger. As John Tarrant says, it's as natural as sneezing. So, but when we're doing the work of the sense gates, when the wandering mind contacts that object of perception to such a degree that it just merges with it, well, how do you stop the sound of the temple bell? Merging with all of these sense gates. How do you stop the sound of the temple bell? And in this merging, the mind just forgets its limitations. It just naturally sheds its limitations. And its essence, pure awareness, shines forth. So the perceiver and the perceiver, those divisions are gone. And what shines through is not the object of perception, right? It's the presence underlying the awareness of the object. And this just very naturally happens. This is the nature of our mind when it's still. And there are places where this work is maybe a little easier, where, John Tarrant, where accidents are more likely to happen, sneezes are more likely to occur. And I think we've all experienced sacred place. Of course, every place is sacred. Nothing is outside the vast field. But we have, I think, all tumbled into sacred space. Hongzhi talks a lot about this as this invocation of our Buddha nature. Pervades the whole universe right here, now, wherever we happen to be. And Zen really uses this to great advantage. It has a rich history in poem and in place. The hermits of central and southern China. I know some of you are familiar with the poems of Cold Mountain, the 12th century mystic. Cold Mountain being his name, and also the mountain that he lived in. And he also expresses this breezing through the world. 1,000 clouds, 10,000 streams, here I live, an idle man. Roaming green peaks by day, back to sleep by cliffs at night. One by one, springs and autumns go, free of heat and dust, my mind. Sweet to know there's nothing I need, silent as the autumn rivers flood. So when I read Cold Mountain, I'm naturally brought back to Ireland because, talk about beautiful places. And there's this area on the west coast of Ireland called the Burn, The name comes from Borin, which means stony place. And it's this kind of surreal karst limestone scenery. It's about 500 square kilometers, and it's just limestone pavement, clints, grikes, rocks, caves, mountains that are just made of stone. The tallest of which is Mullaghmore, which means sacred mountain. And it's a place that has been deeply sacred to the native population since, well, prehistory. And when walking there, it feels like you could be on a lunar landscape. It's that different. In fact, I think in one of the more recent Star Wars movie, the one they filmed on Skellig, they actually filmed some of the other planet vistas on the burn because it just looks so much like it's not of this world. Until, of course, you wander into a group of goats or a family of donkeys or a few cattle just wandering around trying to find some grass in the midst of these stones. So amazing and perfectly ordinary. Don't get too close to those goats. No. So it has thousands, literally thousands of archaeological sites, over 90 megalithic tombs, Pul na Brón, which is an early Neolithic portal tomb dating back to 3,800 BCE. So you can see how far back in the human landscape we're going here. Over 80 wedge tombs, and then like hundreds and hundreds of ring forts with these like amazing names. Caherconnell, Cahercumán, Ballykingovara from the Gaelic, which are basically just descriptions of the landscape. Why would you make up a name for a place when you can just describe it, right? And Comcaro Abbey, the ruins of that at the 12th century Cistercian monastery, which is on the lee side of Abbey Hill, away from the ocean. And when my kids were little, my sister lives in Clare, so when my kids were little, we climbed up Abbey Hill. Now, by Ohio standards, Abbey Hill is a mountain. It's not like a little hill. It's this big stony mass. And of course, we climbed up the ocean side, and the wind literally blew us up that mountain. And when we got to the top, we had to shelter on the lee side of the cairn on top because the rain was pelting down. And then, of course, within 15 minutes, the sun was shining through the clouds, and the shafts of sunlight were shining down on Abbey Hill and the coast, all the way up to the Flaggy Shore. The Flaggy Shore is this area of limestone scenery to the northwest of Clare. So basically on the south side of Galway Bay. And it's this liminal place where nothing is as it seems. You actually experience this with your senses. I'm not being poetic or kind of putting a gloss on it. It literally is a landscape where nothing is as it seems. Before the continents were formed, this area was south of the equator. It was like a primordial ooze. And you actually can find tropical corals, the fossils of tropical corals in the limestone pavement in County Clare in Ireland. How just amazing is that, right? And more recently, only like 12,000 years ago, the sea level was 300 foot lower. So what is now land was sea, and what is now sea was land. And it's really obvious because you really can't define sea and land here. And then the work of these vast glacial forces is everywhere, these striae just scarring the entire landscape. So you could literally walk the flaggy shore from Kinvara to Nuki in less than an hour. Even I can do that. But, time isn't really applicable here. You're in geological time, but you're even beyond that. You're in prehistory, poetic, mythical time. Of course, where time doesn't apply at all. The sea, if you sit up on Abbey Hill and you look down on the flaggy shore, the sea flows into the land flows into the sea, the sky flows into both. It's literally a land between opposites. There are no opposites here. And it's a place that, just with the sense gates, you need to know nothing about null, dual traditions or anything, but just sitting there, seeing, hearing, etc. Any attachment, any fixation, any rigidity is just naturally loosened up in this fluid, ever-changing landscape. It's like stopping the wandering mind. It just merges completely with the experience. There is no you and it. And this is the place that Seamus Heaney, the Irish poet, wrote his masterpiece, Postscript. He talks about the power of this shore to catch the heart off guard and blow it open. And sometime make the time to drive out west into County Clare along the flaggy shore in September or October, when the wind and the light are working off each other, so that the ocean on one side is wild with foam and glitter, and inland, among the stones, the surface of a slate-gray lake is lit by the earthed lightning of a flock of swans, their feathers ruffed and ruffling, white on white, their fully grown, headstrong-looking heads tucked or cresting or busy underwater. Useless to think you'll park and capture it more thoroughly. You are neither here nor there, a hurry through which known and strange things pass, as big, soft buffetings come at the car sideways and catch the heart off guard and blow it open. And you can hear the echoes of Hangzhi there, right? Vast space is all embracing, the same as ultimate emptiness, the heart blown open. So yes, Hangzhi's practice instructions are guides to the absolute, but they are also very much guides to functioning in the world. He says, vast space is all-embracing, the same as ultimate emptiness. Developed skill is equally effective for all the 10,000 forms. So his expression of the Dharma winds just naturally flowing through this world, insights washing through our habitual conditioning. All we have to do is allow that to happen, relax, allow, and our inherent luminous nature shines forth. How can it help but shine forth? And of course, our practice rests on the faith which we verify in our own experience, that the field of vast brightness he speaks of is and always has been ours. Buddha nature pervades the entire universe. And why do we practice? We practice to realize and to manifest this truth in our lives, in this body, in these circumstances. And then, of course, it just naturally expresses as compassion in the world. Again, yes, it takes a lot of work, but it is inherently effortless. If not a single dust is distinguished outside, then you can adapt to changing circumstances. If not one speck is left over inside, then immediately you can abide in meditation, just allowing. So no hindrance in the mind, no hindrance in the world, complete alignment with Buddha nature. Since the inside is empty and can respond, absorbing or not absorbing is equal. Since the outside is interconnected and constantly vacant, abiding or not abiding is all the same. So clearly, these instructions are written within the context of Buddha nature. We are deeply in the Mahayana here, as of course we always are in Zen. And this awakening, or Buddha nature, is not something created or achieved. It's neither existent nor non-existent. Don't worry about it. Just allow it to breeze through. The essential practice is simply to wake up to Hongji's empty field. It cannot be cultivated or proven. From the beginning, it is altogether complete. From the beginning, it is altogether complete. And our job is the practice realization of this. Practitioners of the way enter samadhi just like our home wind that breezes through the entire world. So the question is then, as Roshi, I think, said during Dharma combat, how do we live and die like this? Because this isn't some metaphysical, airy-fairy, philosophical, theological explanation, right? How do we actually live and die like this? How do we practice our awakening with these feet on this ground, with these people? So one aspect, to come back to the flaggy shore, one aspect is its particular wonders. Some are anomalous, and some are just wondrously ordinary. There's this erratic boulder, this giant granite boulder that was carried by glaciers from County Galway. So an erratic boulder, not in the sense of like emotionally erratic. Well, today I'm going to roll over here, today I'm going to roll over there, which would be equally delightful, but erratic in the sense of glacial. So there's this big, huge granite boulder in the midst of this limestone scenery that has its whole ecosystem. Plants, little animals are in the vicinity of that rock that are not found anywhere else on the burn. Just this whole little world created by this giant boulder. And then, of course, in the terms of the more ordinary, the flowers, people come from all over Europe in the spring to see these flowers. They don't grow anywhere else in Europe. And the names are amazing. Campion, sea radish, sea blight, scurvy grass, sea lettuce, mayweed, and all kinds of orchids. And even just in the names of those, can't you feel them? You don't need to see pictures of them. You can feel them. And then the birds, gannets, swooping down to catch mackerel, stone chats, sparrowhawks, curlews, whimbrels that rest on the flaggy shore on their way from Africa to the Arctic. And the landwinkle, have you ever heard of the landwinkle? So the landwinkle is like a little sea snail that has evolved to exist on land. My children were fascinated by this. You'd be up on the top of Mullaghmore, like miles away from the ocean, and there were these little sea snails existing on land. It kind of speaks to this, everything is not what it seems, right? Earth, sea, land refuse to be fixed, even in these little tiny wondrous manifestations. And then Loch Marie, which is, it's a few feet from the ocean, but there's no inlet and there's no outlet to that lake, which is not atypical of limestone, and probably the lake that Seamus Heaney wrote about, where the swans were. And then, of course, it's been populated by mystics and artists, of course. The Bardic school, the Odalics from the 15th century, that was their headquarters. Yeats wrote that play, Dreaming of the Bones, while he was living there. And it's the tale of these spirits who have been cursed and can find no release. They can't come back together because they can't let go of their bitterness and attachment. They can't forgive. So always human suffering arising, even in the midst of this liminal place. Suffering and the possibility of the alleviation of our suffering. Developed skill is equally effective for all the 10,000 forms. Skillful action, which can just naturally flow forth. So, yes, we're perfect and complete, lacking nothing, and yes, we can use a lot of work, right? We have our human Buddha birthright, and we are really good at getting in our own way. You may have noticed. Hence, we are all here on this hot spring morning. So how do we let go? How do we let go into our Buddhahood? How do we realize the natural, organic breezing through the world? How do we realize that? Well, of course, we do the formal practice on the cushion, right? Release the habitual patterns of ego clinging. We release, we let go, we allow everything to be as it is. The Shokai class is currently on the pure precepts, and this speaks to the first pure precept, right? Do no harm, also phrased as cease from evil, cease creating suffering, cease getting in your own way. So we let go of dukkha, this pervasive feeling that things just aren't quite right. We actually can let go of that. And yes, it does take practice. But all we have to do is become fully present in each moment as it unfolds, as it is arising. Sky, land, sea, no divisions, just flowing into each other. And when this seems overwhelming, and at times it does, how can I possibly do this work? We realize that our delusions are not separate from our awakening. Our delusions also arise in this vast, luminous field. Nothing is outside of Buddha nature. How could it be? Our obstructions are simply the manifestations of this luminous field. We simply illuminate them, we see them, and we let go. And of course, we fall back into our habitual patterns, right? Because we are human Buddhas. Such is life. So we are mindful of our delusions, and we choose not to use them to beat ourselves up or beat other people up, but we use them as fuel. We use them as fuel for our awakening, to clarify, to illuminate the fundamental field of awakening. They are not separate. Hongzhui refers to grinding down and brushing away the dust, so we can simply allow our Buddha nature to shine through. He says, if not a single dust is distinguished outside, then you can adapt to changing circumstances. If not one speck is left over inside, then immediately you can abide in meditation. Thus we function freely in the world. We breeze through the world. We breeze through Sesshin, right? The schedule. Maybe the schedule is easy. Maybe, some difficulty comes up in the Dokusan room, as it frequently does, something pointed. All the intimacy of our practice, all of it, the perfect container to meet all of this arising. The intimacy of the koans, the intimacy of the conversation with the teachers. The koans manifesting. So we work through our particular conditioned dusts to illuminate the original boundless field. Our particular conditioned dusts, because we are not in the business of spiritual bypassing. Yes, the poetic expressions are beautiful, but they refer to you in the midst of that messy situation. How does it manifest now? And it takes courage, and it takes patience, right? Not shutting down, not turning away. And sometimes in the midst of life and in the midst of Sesshin, it's really useful just to ask that really simple question. What am I believing about myself right now? Sometimes when you get carried away by, this is just too much. What am I believing about myself right now? So beliefs, thoughts, emotions can cause our sense of separation, but they're also the gateway to completeness. You cannot bypass them. This is the field of awakening. Somebody said, I can't remember who, you cannot awaken from the neck up. Your whole body awakens. The Buddha sits on the cushion. The Buddha walks through the world. The Metta Sutta, it says, spreading upwards to the skies and downward to the depths, outward unbounded. Outward unbounded. Speaking of metta, loving kindness there, one of those immeasurable qualities of mind. And of course, all qualities of mind are immeasurable, right? Heng Shui says, many lifetimes of misunderstanding come only from distrust, hindrance, and screens of confusion that we create in a scenario of isolation. With boundless wisdom, journey beyond this, forgetting accomplishments, straightforwardly abandon stratagems, and take on responsibility. Having turned yourself around, accepting your situation, if you set foot on the path, spiritual energy will marvelously transport you. Contact phenomena with total sincerity. Not a single atom of dust is outside of yourself. So our anxiety, our sadness, our fears are not mistakes. They're not mistakes. They're not obstacles to the path. They actually are the path. We're not transcending our feelings, our emotions. We're becoming deeply, deeply intimate with them. Nothing is wrong here. This is the problem of dukkha, the belief that something is wrong. Nothing is wrong here. And we do work, of course, on purifying the defilements, right? Being able to act with understanding and compassion in the world as we walk through our lives. And that is simply to open right here and now to our Buddha nature, our innate perfection, just as we are. So we can respond to each speck in complete alignment with our Buddha nature. I think it's Hongzhui who says the awakened mind harmonizes with all that exists. The awakened mind harmonizes with all that exists. So the way of letting go is just flowing, right? Breezing through the world with all that is. And how do we live and die like this? That is the work we're doing, isn't it? How do we live and die like this? You know, James Ford always says that our hurt and the healing of our hurt is found in awakening. I think that's one of the magnificent expressions of Zen practice. Even in all the messiness and confusion, we are identical with the absolute and the boundless. Delusion and awakening are one. Practice and realization are one. Dogen tells us practice is not the path to awakening, it is awakening. And it's about returning, right? Always returning home. This body, this breath, this moment. Vast space is all-embracing, the same as ultimate emptiness. Developed skill is equally effective for all the 10,000 forms. If not a single dust is distinguished outside, then you can adapt to changing circumstances. If not one speck is left over inside, then immediately you can abide in meditation. Since the inside is empty and can respond, absorbing or not absorbing is equal. Since the outside is interconnected and constantly vacant, abiding or not abiding is all the same. Practitioners of the way enter samadhi just like their home wind that breezes through the entire world. So let's dedicate the merit of our time here this morning to all of those who are stuck and rigid and fixed and not in alignment with their own radiant, luminous nature, this perfect circle, perfect and complete. May they find their way, and may we alleviate the suffering of all beings throughout in time, space and time, without exception. Maybe so.
Maybe so.